Let us begin with the St. Louis Cardinals. We're trying to give them more attention this week after they did essentially nothing in the offseason, and they look pretty darn good. So can you give us a summary of what you wrote about with the pros and the cons of how the team is grading out right now?
The pros certainly are just what you mentioned, Scott. They're playing really well, and it can't necessarily be expected by anyone because of also what you said. They didn't do anything in the offseason. They were trying to trade Arenado. They were talking about a reset or reboot, whatever the term is, that's not rebuild. And here they are. They're right there with the Cubs for the most part. And they've pitched extremely well. They've also stayed extremely healthy. So what I wrote about was for all the good that the rotation is doing, rotation is a very low strikeout rate. And with their great defense, and their defense is the best in the league according to outs above average, it can mask some of the lack of swing and miss, but it can't entirely erase it. So that's a concern. And the other concern is, like the Phillies, they have only one player, one pitcher on the IL right now. Kind of remarkable at this stage of the season to have only one player on the IL, and they do. And for the Cardinals, the reason that is a concern, obviously it's a great thing when you're healthy like that, but the concern is their lack of depth. They've got Michael McGreevy at AAA. He could step into the rotation at some point. They've got Steven Matz, who they've used as a starter a couple of times, but they really don't have many reinforcements if a pitcher or two in that rotation goes down, and Gray and Michaelis are older guys. But that said, offensively, while they don't really hit home runs, they crush it with singles and doubles, and they have this relentless style. They play the game well, and so far, so good. It's served them really well.
Did they know going into the season that they weren't going to hit home runs? I mean, they still had Arenado. Arenado's a 30-plus home run guy consistently. But did they know that this was going to be their MO? Like, a lot of these guys are homegrown guys. Are they growing guys in the minor leagues saying, don't worry about hitting for power? Jordan Walker was one of their top prospects. Never has had a ton of power or elevation in his swing.
I don't believe they looked at it that way, Eric, but I'm not really sure. I haven't asked that question. Walker is a guy who, you're right, doesn't have a lot of elevation in swing, but you would think can develop power. Nolan Gorman has power, but both those guys, Walker and Gorman, have been struggling for the most part. Some of their other players, like Victor Scott II and Mason Wynn, they're not going to be power hitters, even Brandon Donovan. So they had to assume it to some extent. Wilson Contreras obviously has power, as does William. But I don't know that they saw themselves as a home run team. But what they've done is decide, okay, we're not going to chase power because that only makes hitters worse. What we're going to do is play to our strengths. And their strengths are putting the ball in play and making things happen on the bases. And so far, they've done a great job of that.
New hitting coach, Brant Brown, obviously wasn't good as an offensive coordinator. Is this his MO? Because he was one of the hitting coaches that helped that Marlins team with Skip Schumacher make the playoffs. Now this is another team that he is heading up the offense, and they're overachieving.
Eric, it's always difficult to fully assess the role of a hitting coach and how much impact he can have or not have. Brant Brown, though, as you mentioned, has had success in those two places. In Seattle, it just didn't work. He was only there a couple of months before they let him go. So you'd have to give him some credit. You definitely have to. You can't just ignore the contributions of a hitting coach. But hitting is so complex. It's so layered. There are so many things that go into it that even the best hitting coaches will tell you there's only so much they can control. So, hey, great for Brant Brown, and certainly good for the Cardinals that this has all happened. How much credit he deserves, or that versus the developments of younger players, I'm not sure.
Ken, I want to spin this forward for the Cardinals. Obviously, we're early for the trade deadline, but if they stay in contention like this, do you think that there are factors involved that lead them to be more aggressive buyers than maybe they should be? And the two factors for me that stand out are, number one, this is the last season that John Mozeliak is really running the ship for the front office. And number two, I think that the Cardinals might be a little less concerned about their win projections for the rest of the season. Let me give you a quick example. The Orioles in 2022 were, I think, still kind of in the mix. And I remember they ended up selling, right? Mike Elias ended up selling Trey Mancini, and they got some good names back, including Chase McDermott, who hopefully is healthy for them at some point and contributes. I think they traded Jorge Lopez as well, and they might have gotten like Yenir Cano. Somebody good came back there as well. So you look at the long-term, great. But on the short term, I was like, really? You don't think you have any chance? And I think they were looking at their win projections. Do you think the Cardinals might go the other way because they might not think like Mike Elias does? A little less computer analytics for a year like this.
I expect that if they're in contention, this being Mozeliak's last year, as you mentioned, that they will buy. Now, are they going to expend assets to make a big run, go all in, so to speak? No, I can't see them doing that. I would expect that they make relatively minor moves. If you remember a few years back when they acquired John Lester, that was Lane Thomas for John Lester. Now, Lane Thomas became a good player, but at the time, it was not a monster move. It was just a move that would upgrade them a little bit. I expect that that is what they would do. That is the approach that they would take if they fall out of it, and or if they are simply in a spot where they don't see their playoff odds as being very good, and like you said, the win projections are not where you would want them to be. Yes, I could see them selling, but I really don't see that happening with them. To me, they're going to be buyers, but limited buyers, not giving up anything that's going to cost them too deeply for the future.
I want to shift gears here a little bit and talk a little bit about the Guardians and their needs. You brought up in your story the other day about outfield needs. Where do you see this going? Do you see them buyers or sellers too as well? I mean, they're a pretty good ball club.
Good segue, Todd, because Lane Thomas just came back last night, and we just were talking about him. And that's a guy that they missed. He had a bone bruise in his right wrist, and he's back in center field and had a sac fly last night, I believe. He will help them. They still have nothing in right field to speak of. It's been like a perennial problem for them, and it's something that they're hoping to address. David Fry is going to come back, but mostly as a DH. And they've got a prospect named Chase DeLauder who has been frequently injured, but he could be someone who helps them in the second half as well. I expect they too will be buyers, but kind of like the Cardinals, probably not willing to expend too much to make a big run. They've got Shane Bieber coming back for the rotation. They need him, and he's on a good track right now, so hopefully that goes well. But right now, I just see them as doing what they normally do, which is kind of assessing all aspects of the market and then hoping things go okay.
Even after last season, even after how close they got last season and they have a powerhouse bullpen, they still wouldn't make that move to push them over the limit.
The Guardians are never going to be in that position. And they are a low revenue team that acts according to their revenues. Unlike some teams that we criticize for not spending enough money, they actually seem to be in a position where they can't spend all that much money. Could they spend more? Yes, they could spend more. Don't get me wrong. But they operate in a pretty restricted way. And hey, it served them well. They've done a great job with it. But are they going to do something monstrous at the deadline? No, that's not what they've normally done. Remember a couple of years ago, they traded Savali for Kyle Manzardo. And Kyle Manzardo at that time was a prospect, but he ultimately now is helping them. So I don't know what kinds of moves they're going to make. They don't have the pitching depth to move a starter right now. They need a starter, if anything, need an outfielder as well. I would expect them to operate on the margins as they generally do and maybe pick up something, but I don't know that it's going to be terribly dramatic.
FT fam, let's talk about the HOF app. If you're into parlays, but sometimes you're missing the mark more than you would like to, can I introduce you to some serious analytics on an app that is easy to read and comprehend? And I'm sitting next to a man who knows how to place a parlay.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is breaking down a parlay with this Hall of Fame app. There's the situations that you'll find easier to do. It's very helpful in understanding. And if you like, gambling, sometimes this is really good to know. So get on there, get on that Hall of Fame app and check it out.
Yeah, this is info that will help you, okay? With a 4.9 rating in the App Store and over 6,000 five-star reviews, safe to say that HOF has already helped a lot of people bet smarter. For a limited time only, FT listeners can get a 7-day free trial and 50% off their first month when they use code FOUL at checkout. Download the HOF app on iOS or Android. Enter code FOUL and you're all set. We've given a lot of attention to the Orioles in the past week, warranted with what's going on there. I'll also try to spin this one forward. Could they be the belle of the ball, to take a term from Fair Territory, at the trade deadline? You know, you have the bottom feeder teams that don't necessarily have many assets. And then you just have many teams that are close enough in range that it gets weird at the trade deadline and you almost feel like they're day to day deciding things. The Orioles might be one of those teams where it's like, we have assets, we are not good, let's load up for next year. So what does that look like?
I totally agree with you, Scott. And they can be pretty dramatic buyers, quite honestly. Felix Bautista, 2 years of control left beyond this year, making only $1 million, relatively speaking, only this year. I would expect that he would be someone who could bring something back pretty good. Zach Eflin, potential free agent. Tomoyuki Shigano, potential free agent. Cedric Mullins, potential free agent. All of these players should have some appeal in the market. For rentals, are you going to get a ton? Probably not, but they certainly can do some things. And I'm not even talking about Ryan Mountcastle, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Andrew Kittredge. There are a whole bunch of players that they could move. Now, how Mike Elias approaches this could be interesting because I can't imagine he wants to take too far a step back. So potential free agents would be the way to go here and the things that you would most likely trade. Bautista, maybe you're more reluctant, but he can bring the most because he's a reliever, under control, and affordable. So it's going to be interesting. Their situation is one where ultimately their window already is closing as their young players get closer to free agency. They're not that close yet, but each year, closer to arbitration, make more money, closer to free agency, possibly depart. And now you're going to take a step back. That's going to be difficult for them. But at the same time, I don't know what other choice that they have, given that they have a number of expiring contracts and they're going nowhere.
You mentioned Sagano. They also mentioned that they wanted to make a hit in the Japanese market. They wanted to make their case for, hey, bringing a player over. Good way to do that is by bringing a veteran over and a veteran saying, man, I love playing in Baltimore. A bad way to do that is, I love playing in Baltimore, but they traded me in July, so I had to learn a whole brand new city.
This is an interesting question too, and I raised this in my notes column as well. You're trying to establish a footing in that market. You signed Shigano, who's a very accomplished pitcher over there, 35 years old, one of their best. And it goes like this. Now, they sold him on the quality of the team and the idea that they could help him improve, and he's done really well. He's been one of their few bright spots. But if you trade him, sure, it's a dent. And it raises the question, if you're a Japanese player, I would imagine, why would I go there? This is a situation that is not as good as even Shigano thought. So there is that, but there's also the reality that why would you keep him just to keep him if you're going to lose 80 to 90 to 100 games? That doesn't make much sense either. So I can see the logic for trading him, but the whole experience, not playing well as a team, him ultimately perhaps getting traded, that's not exactly the way to plant the flag over in Japan.
A couple fan questions on your way out here, Ken. I'll go to the Blue Jays. Reagan says, where will Bo Bichette get traded to? I'll counter that and say, do we really think Bo Bichette's going to get traded? I imagine the Blue Jays are going to hold on for dear life, and they have to be really far out of it if they're going to be sellers at the deadline. They're in second place in the division right now. They're within striking distance of a wild card. And Ken, that probably will be the case the rest of the ride here. The American League is not as strong as the NL, so you can be 500 and probably be in striking distance.
They're over 500 right now. They just swept Seattle and San Diego, two good teams. And they have been talking as a team, if you read the articles about the Jays, as if the vibe is better. They are more, I don't know the right word to describe it, but they're in a better place overall. They just feel good about themselves. They feel like they're not out of any game. All of these cliches that you always hear. So for them, it's put up or shut up because this is Bichette's last year. And I don't see them selling unless they absolutely fall out of it. Remember, they were adamant about keeping Bichette and Guerrero when he was unsigned, and they ultimately signed Guerrero. They didn't want to ever give up on this season. So I don't expect them to give up on this season unless something goes really wrong.
I want to ask a little bit here. It's been going around. It's been circling around baseball, whether it's true or not. Paul Skenes traded, likely or unlikely? What do you think? What have you heard? Is this just all nothing?
Unlikely. And the general manager of the Pirates, Ben Cherington, said yesterday to reporters that no, it's not even something that's in their thought process. The reason it's going around is because writers like myself are speculating. And let's face it, the Pirates are going nowhere. Skenes is a depreciating asset, 4 more years of control after this one, and he's never going to sign there long term. So you wonder when the right time is. But for a variety of reasons that I discussed on Fair Territory yesterday and mentioned in my column today, I just can't see it happening. One reason is Sherrington's status beyond this season is unclear. He very well could lose his job. And if he's going to lose his job, and if that thought is in the owner's head, Bob Nutting, well, why would you trust him to trade your franchise pitcher? That doesn't make much sense. The other part of his or the other 2 parts of it are matching up in value. Skenes has extreme value. Remember, Juan Soto was traded with 3 pennant races remaining, and you know what he brought back along with Josh Bell to the Washington Nationals. Gore and Wood and C.J. Abrams plus. Skenes has 5 pennant races remaining. It would take that much more to get him, and I don't know many teams that could do it. And finally, the message they would send as an organization. Even if you could make a great trade for Paul Skenes, their fans, they're dealing with their 7th straight losing season. So how many are going to lose in a row, losing seasons, until this team finally is good again? Now, what they should do, and I mentioned this as well, is build around Skenes. But of course, with Bob Nutting as their owner, I have zero faith that that's going to happen.
Yeah, they're in a tough spot. All right, last one. This is super chat. It's a follow-up to this on Charrington. Daniel, who's an avid Fair Territory watcher and listener, said, if the Pirates do end up switching GMs, he said he's pleading, can it be from a small market team, saying we need someone who's done this before, and that Charrington was coming from bigger markets. Do you think that's a factor in a case like this? Or in my mind, the Pirates are such a unique situation because you're just not able to partake in free agency. So even for the teams that tank, like even the Guardians, the Rays, right? Guardians picking up Carlos Santana, Rays picking up Ha-Seong Kim this offseason. Those are decent sized deals, at least for one season. The Pirates rarely even play ball like that.
That's true. When I heard the question that you were just mentioning, Scott, I immediately thought of the Marlins. And the Marlins are somewhat similar to the Pirates. They don't play in free agency. And what did they do when they needed a new GM? They went to Peter Bendix, who, of course, came from the Rays. I do expect or believe, I should say, that the best solution for them would be a GM with small market experience. And it's not that Ben Cherington couldn't do that. I know he worked in Boston and Toronto before, but he certainly was capable. But that said, if you have that background, if you're used to operating on the margins, if you're used to relying on drafting and development, as Cherington has tried to be, but just has not succeeded with, then I think you would have that much more of an advantage if you just know the landscape a little bit better. So I'm not saying they should hire from the Marlins or necessarily even the Rays, but it would seem to me that if you could get a bright person from one of those types of clubs, a smaller market, lower revenue team, that would probably be the way to go, unless there's somebody with one of the larger markets that is just so good, you think he could do it for you under the crazy restrictions that they're under.
Hey everybody, be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.